They were just made out of a pine tree and sliced real small, and there'd be a 1, a 2, or a 3 on a little rope. And it was a great honor if you achieved a pine knot medallion. And you'd wear that around for several days, that you were the top speller in the community. And what a lot of the teachers found, these mountain ladies were excellent spellers. They did not know how to read or write, but they knew how to spell. Isn't that sort of remarkable? And the type of spelling bees were cross-bench spelling bees. Now, I know you're probably familiar and have heard that term, but do you know how a cross-bench spelling bee works? At the very end, you determine the winner by how many crosses of the room you went. You see, you had team 1 and you had team 2. And let's say that the first students were given the word exceptional. Okay? If team A, if their very first student spelled exceptional well, he got to cross over to the bench on that side. Okay, so at the end, the teacher kept track of how many crosses over there were to the other bench, and whoever had the most crossovers was the winner. That's why they were known as a cross-bench spelling bee. But not only were there the spelling bees, there was also geography quizzes, because that was one of the most common subjects that were taught. Now at Roaring Fork, on what is now the old Roaring Fork Motor Nature Trail, about 2.5 miles up from where the old mill is, okay? Do you know there was a church and it was a school during the week, and that's where Herb Clable went, and he said, we had history, we had geography, we had health, we had spelling, we never had science. And I found out that was true of a lot of the schools here. And so Herb was asked about this in an interview in the 1970s. So he said, why didn't you have science? And he said, oh, I guess it's because we lived in the mountains. And all the people around here knew about trees and bugs. He said, I figured science was more for the city people. Isn't that cute? That was Herb's way of putting it. But anyway, they had geography quizzes. They also had recitations. That was very important when you would memorize certain poems and give your recitation. And then they'd also have singing competitions. So lots of different ways to do that. Now, the one school that I want to talk about for just a minute is Roaring Fork. And this was also a church on Sundays. It was a Baptist church, but it was the Roaring Fork School, and it was built in 1927. Herb Clabo and his brother and sister, they all attended school there, and for them, it was like a 1.5 mile walk every morning from their home. He said we'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Start walk 8, we would be there. You see, before they ever left home, it was their job to feed all the cows and to feed the horses, plus they had to get all the stove wood for Mama in the house before they ever started walking to school. And so can you imagine kids today with all that? But he walked to school every day 1.5 miles uphill. Both ways. I just had to add that to the story. But because it was also used as a church, there were 2 doors. This was very traditional back then. And so on Sundays and during weekdays when school was, all the girls went in the left and the boys went in the right. And as soon as they got into the schoolhouse, that's how they had to sit. And so Herb was asked, why he thought they had to stay separated. And he said, well, you know, school was so important back then. And it was such a sacrifice for our parents to send us to school that anything that would stop us or distract us from learning was put to an immediate stop. And he said, if I went to school and there was a girl I kept peeking at and twiddling at, he said, I couldn't learn nothing. Well, I'm just telling you what he said. But he said, of course, being a smart boy, like I was, there were ways around this. And he said, whenever my teacher turned her back and she was at the blackboard, that's when I knew it was time to flip my juicy love notes into the air. And he said, you know, I'd flip my love notes, but if I had boys I didn't like, sometimes I'd have some extra of those hard-dried beans that I'd held back. And I was pretty good at flipping those too off of certain boys' heads. But he said you had to be careful in terms of your aim when you were flipping those love notes, because you didn't want them to get to the wrong girl. And that happened to her one day. And he said, I got this girl, didn't like her one bit. And wouldn't you know it, she got my juiciest note of all. Well, anyway, those were things he talked about at their one-room school.